Well, hello, and welcome back. I am Paige Elizabeth, and this is my channel. I do a video called Creating Consciousness. Usually I'm talking with Katie. I bring in other people from time to time. This is actually Michelle Latour. She is one of the coaches on my team. So we have a women's wellness program, and she handles the fitness side of it, not because women are expected to engage in fitness, but because if they want to get started, we want to give them some easy steps for how they can do that and incorporate fitness into their life. So welcome, Michelle.
Well, thank you so much.
And Michelle, where are you at these days?
I'm actually now in Surprise, Arizona, which is a suburb out of Phoenix on the west side.
Okay. Yeah, I knew you were in Arizona. Michelle and I both went all the way to Florida and then came all the way back.
We knew each other in Vegas too, so
Yeah. Yeah. Michelle and I both agreed that the Florida Sunshine State is the joke. It's a rainy state. It
very
rains.
much so.
Yes, all the time it rains in Florida. So anyway,
Yeah.
well, welcome, Michelle. And Michelle's biggest passion these days is kettlebells. Why don't you walk us through how you fell in love with the kettlebell routine?
Okay, well, I had been a Bikram yoga practitioner probably for since 1996 or 97, I was gonna say when I was in Florida the first time. Moved to Vegas, just really that was my practice, was doing the Bikram yoga. And I want to say in 2009, the Bikram studio that I was going to decided it needed to add fitness as well to kind of expand its not just yoga scenario. So the guy found a kettlebell instructor to come in, and it was teaching hard style. And it was very difficult for me to kind of understand their concepts of movement, and their breathing was completely backwards from what I knew in yoga. And then this little Filipino guy who Paige and I both know um, came in, and he brought these colorful rainbow colored kettlebells that were all the same size. And I said, well, what is this? And he said, well, there's a sport with it. And I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like, yeah, do this. And he taught a whole different method of movement and breathing that kind of made sense to me. So I took his class once a week. And at the time, I was working for US Foods. And what I noticed was at about 3 or 4 weeks, it was easier to lift the cases of 30-pound eggs, into my car. And I'm like, okay, well, why is this happening? Obviously, I started doing that weight training. So, well, let me try 2 classes a week and see what goes from there. And I started noticing that it was easier to lift cases of water. It was easier to lift just heavier things. And I was like, and at that time, I was just about to turn 40. So it was kind of like, well, this isn't interesting. So I started taking more of those weight classes because the way the kettlebell sport is there's a cardio component as well as a weightlifting component. So you're trying to lift a weight as many times as you can in a time frame. So you've got some speed and some endurance elements in there. And I found I was not that I was overweight, but I found the muscles not getting bulky, but I was getting really super defined and getting really strong. And then one day, that coach said, oh, by the way, did you know there's competitions for this thing? And there's one in Costa Mesa. You want to go? And I did. And that's what got me on the competition sport aspect of it, because it's sort of like, oh, now I can train for something, not just kind of go to a class, but there's some reasons why. And I've learned a lot how to get to that level. But what I also learned as well when I opened my gym briefly in Las Vegas was that just doing the exercises and kind of focusing on maybe a training aspect, but not really. People lost weight, people got strong, and people got confident. And we had one client with bone on bone knee. She was, she's probably like 5 years older than me, and she could do it. Some of our best lifters that we had were both a husband and wife team, and they joined us when they were 60.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
So how long have you been using kettlebells then?
I'm going to say now it's probably almost, it's about 15 years.
Awesome. Yeah, I come from a yoga background as well, as a lot of people know. And it's interesting because when you're in that system, the amount of pedestaling they do with mobility is ridiculous because a lot of it is to the extreme to where it actually sets you up for dislocations when you're older and hip
Hmm.
replacements and frozen shoulders, or what's the other one? Uh, oh, what is that called when you can have that? A bone spur.
Yeah.
So it sets you up. And I just remember kind of having a moment where I finished the fourth series, which is really extreme. And I was happy. It's like I used to tell people because they're like, oh yeah, you got to keep going. No, 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 no. Like fourth series is so extreme. It's a place you visit. It's not a place you live. And to continue to do that to my body was not healthy. And seeing and talking to a lot of circus people actually were the ones who informed me of if you keep it up, you can expect these issues. And I was like, yeah, I don't want to do that. So I took a big, like, I broke up with the practice completely for many reasons, but then I found myself not really knowing kind of where to put that energy. And then I got into lifting, and it's amazing to me. Like, there's a healthy mobility, which is like, I can touch my toes.
Hmm.
No one needs to put their leg all the way back here. Like, that's not necessary. And I am still in the process of trying to restabilize this right shoulder.
Right.
So,
And to speak of that note, I actually took a teacher training with Tony Sanchez, who's one of Bikram's first teachers that opened the studio in San Francisco back in the day. And he's the one, you see the 84 asana posters, that's him. And I took a workshop with him that only longtime practitioners or yoga teachers could take. So there's no like newbies in here or wannabe teachers. These are people that have done that class. And it was most interesting how he explained some of the postures that a lot of teachers were doing wrong that they learned through the Bikram studios. Um, in the sense of posture or in alignment and the way your hips are supposed to be. The biggest one is dancer's pose. Well, every Vegas dancer twists their hip out so their leg gets higher up, and that's not the point of the posture.
yeah. And for those who don't know, just a funny side
Yeah.
note, Bikram yoga and Ashtanga yoga are the equivalent of liberals and conservatives in
Yeah.
the yoga world. Like, they don't like each other.
Well, and it's ridiculous because Ashtanga was founded on more gymnastics based exercises, and they're good for what they do, and it has its approach. And the Bikram series actually came from a bunch of bodybuilders that really just wanted to learn how to muscle control so they could pose,
Mm.
and some rehab in there because they would hurt their muscles, you know.
But of course, we can't do anything in moderation. We all have to go to the
No.
extreme, right?
And the heat was an extreme thing that was made up in Hollywood.
Right.
So it's not how they practice yoga in India. They go to the mountains where it's cool, fresh air.
And unfortunately, none of that brought me any more inner peace.
I know, right? And maybe you do a lot of laundry.
So, yeah, obviously, I think like society's gotten a little bit more hip to this topic. Just the idea of having that healthy muscle with age. And
Hmm.
the thing that I come across with a lot of people, not just women, is it's like you're aging, right? The
Yeah.
insulin resistance is kicking in because nothing else has changed, but stress is higher, so cortisol is higher. Now it's beating out insulin, and now you have insulin resistance, even though your diet hasn't changed. And it's like, well, one of the best ways to combat that is building muscle. So there's like this kind of awareness that happens when you get older that like, well, if I want to, you know, take back the clock a little bit, if I want to preserve anything, my health, anything, muscle is a huge component of that. And people just don't know where to start.
Yeah. And I think unfortunately, a lot of them start like with a trainer that may have taken a weekend course or really didn't study kind of what it does or understand it. And they make these poor people do too much too soon. And that's the other thing I learned was when I started training with my sport coach. First thing she did, she gave me my weekly thing, and it was like, okay, 3 days you lift, but now I had 3 days of running, and I hadn't at that point ran since my high school track days, and now I'm like 43, going like, shoot, she wants me to run for 40 minutes. What is that, and but what I did was I piecemealed it because I was worried about my joints adapting at that age. So I took the approach. I said, 40 minutes, you know what? I'm going to run a minute, walk a minute, run a minute, walk a minute, and see how that goes. And if that was fine, the next one I said, you know what? I'll run 2 minutes, 1 minute, 1 minute, 1 minute, 1 minute, and then try to do like 2 minutes, 1 minute, 2 minutes all the way. And then slowly, if I had a short run, maybe I would go 3 minutes, 1 minute, 3 minute. Um, just kind of testing my joints out with a slow approach. And my opinion is some of these people like in their 40s that have not done anything probably for 20 years, they go in thinking they could do the same things they did when they were 20, and they injured themselves or they get burnt out or something like that. And you just have to allow yourself to ease into it a little bit.
Yeah. So what are some of the things that you help beginners with?
When I help beginners with, first of all, it's kind of seeing some of their mobility in some ways. A lot of times in teaching just the sport lifts, I'll just say, I'll show them where the bell goes, hit the positions. You want it to go overhead to the top, and here's how you should hold it. You want it to be in the rack position, here's how you should hold it. Now, try a swinging movement to get it to the here or here. And then I kind of watch how they do it, because some people can get it pretty quick. Some people are very tight in their shoulders or their elbows, and they can't make a straight arm. So we've got to figure out how to straighten their arms. Sometimes they can't go here, but they're here. So we got to figure out how to open this up. And sometimes I use Indian clubs or different stretching exercises, yoga things like Cobra, just to get them to try to broaden this a little bit. And then sometimes eventually in time, the more times they're moving the kettlebell, the weight of the kettlebell will kind of pull them straight to at some point, you know. And the idea is to also stick with, and what I found in training with kettlebells too is taking the mentality of going too heavy is the way to go faster and have more endurance is completely incorrect.
Mm.
The way you get faster with a heavier bell is you got to be faster with the light bells,
Mm.
you know.
So, do you find that you come across more weakness or more tightness with some of these beginners?
Honestly, it can be both. I find that some people have tightness are usually the ones that have lifted weights in more of a bodybuilding fashion to build a shape. Um, the weakness ones, the one I see the most in women especially is holding a weight overhead. A lot of women are and I was that weak person at the beginning because at the time I started, an 8 kilo bell was the lightest you could go. That's like 17 pounds. I could do it, but it was hard. When my Vegas coach came across a 10-pound bell, oh my gosh, it was like night and day.
Mm.
I could hold that and start to stabilize that and get better at that. And even when I had the gym, we even had to go down to 4 kilo bells for some women because they can't hold 9 pounds over their head.
Mm.
You know, this is kind of unnatural for them. You know, and if you think about it, you might have to take a suitcase and put it in a higher spot. So you might need some of this overhead stability.
Yeah, it's quite amazing because I mean, like you, I've been active my entire life, so I don't know what it's like to be on the other side of that.
Mm-hmm.
I can't imagine starting a lifting routine, a kettlebell routine, or something like at 40 and not having any background. And yet there's so many women like this. I have three sisters like this. If I was like, hey, let's go lift weights, I'd be like, yeah, you're funny. Like it's just not gonna happen, right? Like, and so what is a protocol? What is a very basic protocol that you would take a beginner through?
I found so a way I kind of get confidence in beginners is even if it's with the lighter 4 kilo bell, I have found that most can still endure either we go minute aside. Most people can kind of handle a minute. And depending on the lift, it can be anywhere from 10 to 15 reps. But I just said, let's go for a minute. Okay. And they can do it and then they switch. And sometimes we'll rest and we'll kind of interval it that way. Some of them can go 6 minutes where I go here, minute here. Like they're thinking in their brain, I'm 3 rounds of a minute each side. And they're like, oh, I could do that. But if I told them go for 6 minutes, they'll go like, oh, wait, that's too much.
Mm.
Um, and I just count the reps. And usually what I like to do to build confidence is I call it what I do kettlebell math in the sense that let's say in that 10 minutes, they were able to do on a clean and long cycle. A lot of them can get to about 10 reps in a minute. So say they do 10 and 10 uh, reps, and then they go for 2 minutes or 4 minutes. So that's going to be a total of 40 reps, right? Let me write my math over here real quick on it. So they do 40 reps with a 4 kilo bell, which is basically 160 kilos they lifted. And if you do the math, that's probably around 3,300 pounds. So now I tell this woman who thinks she's very weak that in 4 minutes, she lifted 330 pounds.
Mm.
And they kind of go, oh, really? But they did. It was a lighter weight, but we're moving at many reps. And in my opinion, real life application, a 4 kilos, 9.9 pounds, or 8.8 pounds. It's a gallon of milk. You're more likely to lift a gallon of milk or what's an average cat? We're cat people here. You're going to pick up a cat 40 times and move them around more than you're going to lift one 330-pound thing.
Yeah, definitely. So, what are some of the best transformation stories that you've seen of older people stepping into this?
Uh, we had, let's see, I had my one friend, Irene. She was a bone on bone knee person, could not do walking cardio. She ended up losing about 25 pounds. And she didn't go heavy, but she liked to do what we called marathon sets. So she would take a 12 kilo, 25-pound bell and do a swing to the overhead position, is what we call snatch, for 30 minutes straight, switching whenever she felt like switching her hands.
Mm.
And she could do it. And that was her cardio and weightlifting all in one.
Mm.
So that's what I love about the sport, this style of using the kettlebells, because you get your cardio in and you don't have the impacting on your knees if you don't want to, because you're standing in one spot.
Mm. Interesting. Yeah. I mean, for those who came to my maestro class, it was at her kettlebell studio.
Yeah, that's
Yeah, I
true.
moved your kettlebells around, but I never actually engaged in any kettlebell training. And I'll be honest, like I was always really like, I don't like the swinging motion on the joints. Now, tell me how that works and doesn't hurt you, because that is something that my brain is like,
Yeah. Well, it's actually more of a leg pushing, and your arm is kind of directing. So the best way I explain it is when the bell comes down from an overhead, I catch it with my body and use my hips to push it up. So it's sort of like if you caught somebody else on a swing and you kind of catch them on this back swing part
Mhm.
and then use your hips as where my hands are pushing them forward and they fly up. So it's weightless. I'm
Mm.
not pulling it. It's hip directed flying upwards.
Okay.
A lot of CrossFitters, hardstyle people use their hips and make the bell go outwards in a very jarring motion. I'm using more of a pendulum swing motion to fling it upwards. So I want to relax, 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 relax. Let it drop all the way down. Let gravity let it fall. And then catch it and fling it back up. So oddly, when you go to a kettlebell meet and coaches are yelling at their uh, athletes on the platform, and you can ask our dear friend Mo, what does he always say? Relax, breathe, relax, breathe, relax, breathe. Because we have to go for 10 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And the breathing's like yoga in the sense that whenever the bell goes up, we inhale. And when the bell comes down, just like in yoga. So that's where I connected with the breathing because it made sense.
And that makes a lot more sense because people would used to ask me where I got my strength from as a massage therapist. When I was younger, I did massage and I'm like, it's not my upper body at all. My that's just the end point is my hand. It's actually my feet all the way up,
Yeah.
you know?
And if you look at kettlebell, the top women, they're usually from Russia or Kazakhstan or Ukraine. But if you look at their physiques, they're very slim in the middle. Their arms are toned, but they're not big or bulky. Their shoulders aren't bulky. Um, they'll have apodition, but they have quads. You'll look at them in jeans and go, okay, she's speed skater. Something isn't, the quads are there. And even in the men, they have well-defined quads. And I'm slowly, mine are developing again, I should say, because I went through a period where I overtrained with too heavy weights. And that's when I saw your post about sometimes the body compensates by putting more cushion on, and that's a fat cushion, not necessarily muscle cushion, because it's trying to compensate till it can build the muscle to take over that. Because if you look at power lifters, they've got the bellies, they're not ripped until they, if they're bodybuilders, until they diet down to get there. But for me now at 55, I've got some pretty good definition in my quads and my calves, because it is a leg dominant sport.
Interesting. And like that's just not how it appears at all.
Mm-mm. That's because, unfortunately, and this is kind of why I was excited for you to let me have this platform. It's because when the kettlebell as an instrument came over, or the Americans brought it over, Pavel came up with this whole Russian Spetsnaz story because it's good marketing, blah, blah, blah. It was all these personal bodybuilder trainers that, nothing wrong with bodybuilding if that's what you want to do. However, they're not moving weights around. And really where the sport of the movement came around is these kettlebell weights were the counterbalance weights for wheat and grain in the fields with the farmers. So they learned, they're flinging these things every day. And then they learned, oh, wow, this makes me really strong by trying to move these weights around continuously every day. And this was during, Soviet Russia, especially when, as throughout the history of the world, whenever a government wants to, or a dictator or tyrant wants to take over a group of lovely people, you try to make them as weak as possible. So this was a hidden way for them to maintain their strength. Just kind of how like martial arts a lot of times developed for countries where there weren't a lot of guns. Now they know how to kill you with a shoe or their bare hands.
Right. And did kettlebells come from Russia?
It came from, I think they were the country that embraced it. Right now, I mean, like I said, the Kazakhstan, which of course could have been a province back in the Soviet days, I think it's the people that were in the regime of the Soviets that embraced it. And then the Russian after that put it in schools. So they have it in their schools. I think obviously Ukraine and Kazakhstan should, because they have some of the largest teams that I've seen in international competitions. And I've seen youth competitions in those countries. And Europe has started to have it. So England has a great team. I know China's developing teams. Taiwan has some teams. So India's taken off with it. It's crazy. Australia's got teams.
Wasn't Moses trying to get it into the Olympics? Was that his goal?
Well, we're still kind of trying. I'm with a organization and some people that are trying to get it in. But one of the biggest things about a sport in the Olympics because a guy said, you'll never get it because these are the criteria. And one of the biggest two that, I mean, we had that it's available to men and women. We have that it's can be adapted to somebody with like in a wheelchair. I mean, you can do a seated press, you can do some different things to adapt to different scenarios like that, or athletes of that way. And the only two things we really didn't have was number one, an audience that would draw tickets, of course, the money, and two, um, a youth program. We didn't have like a youth theater program.
Yeah, he was working on the youth part.
Yeah.
I remember the prototypes, the little kettlebells, he was showing me that at the time.
Yeah, because actually, because a lot of our athletes, people, a lot of the Russian, some of the Russian top athletes came to the United States, and we're trying to show our people that were in the community how it works, the different things. And some they did have those little ones for the kids that Moses was making. They exist over there for their junior high kids, and it's kind of part of PE for them because they're a great tool. You don't have to compete with them, but I believe, and I've seen it myself, they make a stronger athlete that could be a better sports person. We trained a guy that was he used to be in the WWE, but he was a bouncer, but he was trying to do some amateur wrestling and want to get back into it. And he heard about kettlebells. He was from Vegas, so he came to our gym. And we trained him for several months, and he went back in the ring, and he came back, and kettlebells was hard for him. He's like, I'm a strong dude, but about 5 reps or 6 reps in, he was wiped because he couldn't lift anymore. So we built his endurance, and he went to go compete in he won every one of his meets because he was like, I didn't get tired.
Mm,
I outlasted everybody. And so we said, there you go. You
nice.
know,
So it's really and truly, it's very safe for the joints.
it is safe for the joints. Again, you're not doing any knee impact. You're really not jumping per se. Even in the jerk, it looks like an extension to go up, but your toes kind of stay on the ground and you're just kind of landing. You're kind of like pushing something up in a soft jump and landing it. We're not doing any deep squats like you might see in a powerlifting where they go under. They throw up the bar so high and then they try to get under it. Our
Mhm.
goal is we're going to toss that kettlebell up here and catch it. So my coach never really has me squat any deeper than 90 degrees.
And your shoulders are good.
My shoulders are great mobility because, again, the swinging is up here. And I'm not just using my joints or putting in a compromising position. We don't go. The other thing, too, is when we do like a press or a jerk or thing, we're going from here on the chest straight up. My arm never goes outward and up.
Mhm.
This is
Okay.
not a movement because A, that's not good for your rotator cuff, but B, this is quicker. This takes a while. And if I'm trying to go as fast as I can, why am I going to do a movement that makes me slow? So yeah, we go here. We never go this way.
And then what about for spine? If someone has herniated discs or something, anything along those lines that people would have to worry about, or
No, we actually, there's a guy in, I think he's in North Carolina, who was a paratrooper back in the day with some fused spine joints, and he competes with 16 kilobells. I think he's in his 60s now too.
okay.
He could throw some heavy weights over his head, um, mainly because, again, kind of part in the breathing with the hips. When I come down, I'm exhaling. So as I exhale, I'm pushing in my abs, which releases my lower back. And when I come up with the bell, I come up and I stand straight. So the bell comes straight up over here. So I'm again relaxing my abs, but my back joints the back muscles and the joints are all staying in one line. And the most relaxation you can get is when all your joints went into the overhead. To be relaxed, you got to stack your joints. So we stack the bones. This is going to stress my muscle here. But if I set my shoulder in its socket, relax my wrist. This muscle's not tense. My grip isn't tense. And I'm stacking on my hips, knees, ankles, the bones holding the weight, not my muscles.
Mhm.
So they get to relax. So oddly enough, I have those the pirouettes, the kind of the bar, like little handle things, and I do handstands.
Mm.
When I practice handstands, I relax into my shoulders upside down because that's the reverse of my overhead position
Mhm.
is a handstand.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. So then, if I may get a little bit more personal, because you are 55, I cater to
Mhm.
women between 37 and like 47 who are dealing with midlife burnout, essentially, um, and trying to reset physically, mentally, emotionally, because, things just change. We can't bulldozer away. Once we hit 40, life and our bodies are just like, nah, you're not doing this anymore. But, that's like the adrenal. Like I deal with the adrenal issues with most women. And then, fast forward to anywhere from 48 to 54, right? Is the
Mhm.
menopause era. And so like I don't have an experience there, but you do. And did kettlebells and that routine help you through that process?
I'm going to say yes because, well, yes, because it also got me to kind of relook at my diet as more of a carnivore diet. So I added a lot more animal fats in, which I think balanced my hormones a lot because I didn't get anything extreme. It was just more like one day it just kind of stopped. I mean, for lack of a better word, you know. And but I think for the mental aspect and some of that point, because the kettlebell training it's focused on a goal oriented. It's not necessarily how you look or what it is. It's just I started focusing on it's a goal. So what I started noticing because I'm doing the same kettlebell weight for some time, there's some different trainings, but you get to a point where you realize where it was really hard to lift that 12 kilo. Now all of a sudden it's really super easy.
Mm,
So what changed? Well, the kettlebell didn't get any heavier. I must have gotten stronger. So now for me, as I age, I'm not looking at I'm declining. I'm looking at I'm getting better because now I'm lifting stronger. I'm lifting heavier. I get more reps in. Maybe I did a set and my heart rate was at, 190 afterwards. I repeat that same set 3 weeks later, not maybe at 160. And so for me, the goal is can I do that same set and my heart rate just be like, okay, fine, you know, um, which is opposite of all Fitbits, but the goal. So now when I'm looking at my training sets, and I do have the wisdom of age that if my coach programs 3 sets of 10 reps with a heavier weight and I do that first set and I can only do 5, I'm not going to try to do 10 the other two.
hmm
I will see if I can do 5 a second. I'll see if I can do 5 a third. And then I write with my coach, hey, I could only do this. And oddly enough, next week she'll give me the same thing, but now my number is 7. So sometimes for her, she tests me to see where I'm at. And I'm wise enough to know that if I can't do it, I'm not going to push myself.
Yeah.
There's kind of no reason for that.
Do you think though that you had kind of created a body, a system that had functioned so optimally that as you transitioned, it wasn't this like overhaul of things falling apart, like, because I mean, I hear some horror stories and I'm just like mortified. I'm like, oh my
Yeah.
God. No, because estrogen leaves the building and that's a big deal.
Right.
Do you do any HRT or no?
Nope.
So that's a pretty big deal. Like if you got through that without the assistance, because I'm game. Like if I feel like I need it, I'm gonna do it. I'm not gonna hold back. But like, who knows? Because I'm so fit and healthy, I have no idea what to expect.
Yeah. To your point back with muscles, especially for women and training and things, I think one of the natural, I mean, what menopause is too is it's just the natural shift of women that we're not in the children bearing age anymore. We're really transitioning into, the next phase. And that next phase, if you go back, because I was reading about this in, oh God, I can't remember where I read this. It might have been like in a Weston Price book talking about hormones, but biologically, if in a tribe, if the men take the younger boys and the younger men, hi Katie, out to go hunt or whatever they're going to do, or go out for the days, or whether it's a war, whatever, somebody has to be strong to protect the young children and the young women. And that was grandma.
Hmm.
That was a 40-year-old, 50-year-old woman. I remember reading too that actually, because our hormones are switching to more testosterone and little less uh, and less estrogen for that nature, so we don't feel the need to. I'm just talking like biologically procreate, in some
Yeah.
ways. Um, we've taken on the role of we're defending. We're there to help the moms with their new babies because we did this already. We're there to help the young boys, and so the dads and the young men come back. And if a bear should come by, who's going to kill the bear? It's like it's the 40 and 50-year-olds, and that's why they've even said mentally women's strength are actually way stronger then, and they make better CEOs at that age. So in a weird reversal, women shouldn't, I'm not going to say shouldn't, but biologically it's easier for them to be the head of a company when they're 40 than when they're 25.
Oh, absolutely.
And it's just because of nature in and of itself. So I think, especially bringing on a weightlifting program when you're 40, if you haven't, your hormones might be working for you rather than against you.
Well, there's some new research to suggest that muscle is kind of an antidote for
Yeah.
disease, for hormone imbalances, for blood sugar issues, for like a lot of things. And it's like, so if one thing is off, then they kind of all are off, right? But if that one thing is in position, maybe the other ones stay in position as well. And
Yeah.
you know, my biggest thing is obviously just the fact that like I said, estrogen leaves the building and that affects your heart, that affects your insulin, that affects just all of these things. And that's why I was just curious if how that transition happened for you. If being fit around that time and just this is just what I do, you know what I mean? If it was helpful, and it sounds like it was.
It was very helpful because also it gave me, I would say, something else to focus on. So, I wasn't, I mean, if I gained, my weight kind of stayed pretty much the same. Like I said, I did notice it did gain weight when I went too heavy too soon and doing double bells, and that's a whole nother conversation. But when I went back to just incremental training and doing it in the right way and not trying to lift too heavy too soon, because I've actually seen a lot of women in my sport that lift too heavy, and the way the body compensates is it counterbalances with weight, not muscle. And they've gained like, anywhere from 40 to 50 pounds. And my signal is I was gaining like 25 to 30 pounds. And I'm like, why am I gaining this? My diet hasn't changed. What has changed? And it was me lifting heavy. So again, sometimes maybe the women in their 40s going through change and they get a weight gain because they think it's the hormones. It could very much be that somebody said, you know what, you need to squat heavy to get quads. You've never, let's get you squatting 230 pounds
Mm.
rather than 100 reps with 80 pounds, which will build.
Elaborate more on that because I've actually not
Yeah.
heard that before, and I'm sure a lot of people listening haven't either. So
Yeah.
elaborate on that too heavy too soon. Because I think a lot of women are like, oh, I need to lift heavy shit. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not one of them. I'm not trying to lift excessively. Like the most I lift is when I hip thrust and it's 110 pounds. Um, but that's it. The rest of I mean, I've graduated from 20 to 40 to 60, you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
I don't know, but like elaborate because I'm curious now.
Yeah, yeah. Well, they get hung up on the number of the how heavy they lift. And I've seen, especially kind of women of all ages, but they call themselves thick thighs save lives. But if you look at their thighs, they're not really defined. They're bigger,
Mm.
but they're not necessarily sculpted and muscular looking. That makes sense. Their arms they don't see a big bicep, but their arms are bigger. Um, if you're putting weight, like especially on the middle, your body's going to put weight on the middle there. So you're going to lose your hourglass figure that you had. And probably one of the first thing you'll blame is, oh my gosh, it's hormones. And the answer is no, you're lifting too heavy and your body wants to protect its organs. My big moment was when they all decided women needed to do double bells in competition. And a lot of the insight was, well, if I can do 12 kilos here, I can do 12 kilos here too. And I started gaining weight in the middle and I didn't know why. And I got an MRI and there were like two small little, I'm going to say internal bruises right where my elbows would be on my abdomen, right below my lungs. And they're like, oh, did you smoke? No, I'm not a smoker. But once they said that, I knew exactly what it was. And I stopped doing the double bells. I was putting, but at that time, I would say my frame was used to doing one arm work with 16 kilos. And now I'm throwing 24 to 28 kilos on my frame. So my body was like, well, we'll just counterbalance you and make a little cushion around your belly to protect your organs.
Interesting.
And yeah. So when you had mentioned your thing on Facebook, how you get a little poofy, my first thought was she must have gone up in weight a little bit. It'll come back down once you adapt, as long as you
Oh, I
let it
felt like wherever I
adapt.
lifted, like whatever part of my body was doing the work, it just swells. It just gets puffy. It's like the inflammation that happens.
Yeah.
I hate it. And I mean, I'm
You
pit.
just have to go, you know what? You have to just not go heavier till that goes down is the best way I can put it. You just sort of have to.
Well, it's not happening as much anymore. So I don't know if my body's just finally adapted to weightlifting or something. But like
It
in the
did.
beginning, my butt would be like twice the size like the next day. I was like, oh my gosh, these pants don't want to fit. It was so annoying. And I knew it was inflammation. I was sore. Like, I'm
Yeah.
sore. I know it's inflammation, but like everyone would think I was crazy. And I'm like, what about working out, tearing down the muscle, water coming in, inflammation coming in? Like, what about that is weird to you? I'm just saying I don't like the effects of it because my body's so reactive. Like, people who can't put on muscle easily, they don't get that response. You know what I mean? Like this,
Yeah.
like the people who are really kind of sinewy and they have a hard time putting on muscle, but they also have a hard time putting on weight, period. Those people, they're not going to have that reaction, but their fibers aren't as reactive either. And I get people arguing with me all the time, like, no, everyone's the same. No, we're not. Like, no,
No,
we're
because
not.
you don't know what the background is of somebody. And also, what you eat and how you recover is a big deal too. You know, I guess as I get older, you get a little smarter. You're like, okay, I need to sleep more. I need to make sure I have enough water. And, you might be looking at your electrolytes a little bit more and what your diet is. And, you know, you it's just a different, you might take a little longer and you give yourself that longer, rather than trying to, oh, I'm sore, but I'm still going to go work out today. You might be like, no, I'm sore today. It's a walking day, you
Mhm.
know, if you need to do something.
Well, I'm really big on because of what I do and how I help women to overcome the adrenal issues, the stress issues, to sleep better, have no anxiety, get over the depression, like all of that, you have to work with your menstrual cycle. And so from days one to like ovulation, game on. I'm going to go to the extremes. I'm going to lift what I want. But literally past day 18 until I start my cycle, what do you want to do today, body? Because the first half of the cycle, when estrogen and testosterone are high, you can get away with a lot. But as you get closer to your cycle, the progesterone peaks. It wants nothing to do with low carb diets. It wants nothing to do with extreme eating, and if you try to push back on that, it will push back on you. And this is how women end up over time developing these like getting stuck in sympathetic dominance where they're always in fight or flight and they can't sleep. It's because they've pushed themselves too far, too long, and they haven't honored that. So it's
Yeah.
not that you can't do that, but there's a time throughout the month. Like fasting's the same way. Like if you're going to fast, intermittent fast, or even do a 24-hour fast, it has to be at the front end of your cycle. You can't do it towards the end, or you really run the risk of just high cortisol because fasting stresses the body. And that week before, your body needs as minimal stress as possible, especially as we get older, to maintain that nice hormonal rhythm.
Yeah. And there, I mean, it's not really done with my coach. We kind of do it more like on feeling, but I have read like it's some higher end athletics for women. That's how they do adjust their training according to cycles, their menstrual cycle. So it is a thing. I know my training, sometimes we go, there's some weeks it's hard, and then we do easy weeks, and then it cycles. And, because I compete, there's even like probably time like maybe 8 weeks out will be the first 2 weeks will be really tough. And then we taper till it's comp day. So when it's comp day, I'm fresh, I'm ready to go, because that's going to be my hard 10 minute set.
Well, I remember even just practicing Ashtanga yoga, and I was always that bulldozer. I'm an Aries. I'm like, I'm fine. Nothing is changing. Like, I am the epitome of doing everything wrong and learning the hard way. Like, that's me. And I remember there'd be times as I got into my 30s where, like, I would be premenstrual, like a day or two out, and I would have nothing. My muscles had nothing. I couldn't find my bond as like my pelvic floor. I couldn't engage on pelvic floor. I couldn't push. I couldn't lift. I couldn't do shit. And I should have taken note then, but of course, I thought I was invincible. Like, you're not, ladies.
No. And it's okay to take that break, it's
Well, you get better results when you listen to your body.
yep.
You get better results. Like, if you're about the result, then follow the protocol. Like, I don't. But, I think some of us who are just such overachievers, we're so addicted to that routine that we don't want to break it up and take that break. It's like we want to push through and act like we're boys. We're not. And boys can do every day the same, the same, the same. They're running on a different cycle, but we can't. And it will start to become more apparent with age, like 100%. Like I could practice, I could do my Ashtanga practice with pneumonia in my 20s and be fine. And then
Yeah.
you give me a little allergies in my 30s and I'm like overwhelmed. It's just not the same. And so obviously, like my message is always that don't have to change the goal. You just have to adapt and shift the way. And so as we get older, it's important to incorporate different things because, yeah, if you want to maintain healthy weight, healthy blood sugars, all this stuff, and you don't want to give up carbs, well, you're going to have to pick up a kettlebell. I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah.
To do something, you know, because it's just not going to work the same unless you do.
Yeah. No, and and what I like about the kettlebell too is a lot of the movements, it's a whole body workout. It's something you don't have to spend an hour at the gym to do it, because it does target, you have to use all of your body muscles to get the bell overhead. And you're trying to find the synergistic best way to do it. Um, there's different techniques or different ways of saying to do it, and people figure it out. It's like riding a bicycle. It's the first time you look like a weirdo and you fall over and you look sloppy, but one day you get that perfect rep that just didn't hurt and it was easy. And then, Mo and I would say, just do that again and do that again. Try to find how to do that again.
Well, and
And
the whole point that of me bringing you on is because you were able to teach something. Like if people don't want to go to a gym or take up a sport, kettlebells, you buy a couple kettlebells and you can do a whole routine from home.
yeah, and there's a lot of variations you can do to it, where it's not the same old thing. That's also what the kind of neat beauty is. There's so many permutations, and I can do sets that are based on speed. I can do sets that are based on a number count. I can do intervals. I can do ladders. I can start with a 12, then do a minute. I can take a 14, do a minute, do a 16 minute, go back to the 14, and then back to the 12. I can also take just my left arm and go a minute with the 12, minute with the 14, minute with the 16, minute with the 14, minute with the 12, left arm only. And then go to the right and do right arm only. That's a whole different exercise than going minute all the way up a ladder, because that was another interesting thing too, because the sport is 5 minutes aside, or you try to make it 5 minutes aside. You got 10 minutes, but arm endurance, man, arm endurance is a thing. A lot of people don't have arm endurance.
Mhm.
Your arm can go for a minute, yeah, and switch it over here and it rests and you could do it again. But if I told you to stick 5 minutes, one arm, that's hard. And I've had to do sets with my coach where I go for 10 whole minutes on one arm with a lighter weight. But what that does, speaking to your joints, now my joints can move 100 times.
Mm.
So when I move it 50, or it goes for 10 minutes, so when it only needs to go 5, it's kind of used to it,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
you know?
Absolutely. And obviously having the mobility, the muscle mass, the strength, because apparently it's not even what is it? Is it grip strength? Like essentially it's not even so much the muscle mass that determines longevity, it's the strength behind the mass.
Yes. And it's also a little, like, again, technique. Talking about grip. We try not to grip the bell because it makes tension here in the forearm.
Mm.
We try to relax it so it rests in our hand. And even when we're coming down, we try not to grip it. We actually make a little hook with our hands. Let's bring it in. Make a little hook. There you go. And the handle rests here as I go down. So I'm trying to find ways just to my grip to be relaxed. So like even one of my drills that I do is I get on a pull-up bar and I hang from my fingers for as long as I can.
Mm.
Not gripping it, but just like this.
Reminds me of when I was like learning to surf and like just paddling will just beat you down.
I know, right?
Just talk about arm endurance. Like, you don't realize how much energy just paddling over and over. And it's so funny because in surfing, you'll literally paddle for like an hour just to catch like 15 seconds of wave.
And
I'm a novice still. I'm not a professional by any means. So maybe, a professional is up for 5 minutes of that hour. But, for me, it's like I'm just paddling, trying to catch the right wave to stand up for a few seconds.
yeah. And I remember too when there were some fitness classes that came about that we used those battle ropes, it's the long rope where you go up and down like you're riding doing a wagon or whatever. There's all these movements, but it's all really arm movements moving the ropes. I remember at that studio, I was the only one that was able to hit the full 20 minutes without stopping. Everybody else had to stop and rest, stop and rest. But I was the competing kettlebells at that time, so I built my arm endurance.
Nice.
Nobody else had it. It was
Nice.
really interesting.
Awesome. Well, Michelle, I really appreciate you being, you know, you're available to me in other ways, but I appreciate you being on this call tonight so people can hear more about kettlebells and just the fact that it exists is something you can do from home and to build that muscle mass and to have healthy longevity. So thank you for participating tonight.
All right, my pleasure. Thanks, everyone. Thank you too, Paige.